Dear televiewers, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Talk to Bonnie. We are continuing today with our discussion on the effects of firewood smoke on our health. And by the end of this discussion, we'll be looking at those groups of persons who have a higher risk to suffer from the effects of prolonged exposure to firewood smoke. And what are some of those professions that can increase someone's risk to suffer from the effects of firewood smoke? Starting, we want to look at some of those persons who have a higher risk to suffer from the effects of firewood smoke. And who are these individuals? These include infants and children. Reasons being that infants respire or they breathe many more times in a minute than an adult. An infant can breathe about 30 to 40, 50 times in a minute. And this increases that child's risk to breathe much smoke that can affect the person's health. We also have women and girls. These persons are always in the kitchen preparing food for the family, and that increases their risk to breathe more smoke in the case when wood is being used to cook the food. We also have the elderly population. They have a higher risk to suffer from the effect of firewood smoke because of a reduced functioning of their immune system. We also have pregnant women. This is another subset of persons, as we already mentioned in the last edition, who have a higher risk to suffer from the effects of firewood smoke because the smoke can affect the woman, can affect the baby in the uterus during pregnancy and even after pregnancy. We also have adults living with existing health conditions like lung problems or heart problems. These persons with prolonged exposure to firewood smoke can have a worsening of their situations. These are some groups of persons that can easily suffer from the effects of firewood smoke with prolonged exposure. Apart from these, we have some professions that can also increase someone's risk to suffer from firewood smoke. And what are some of these professions? Charcoal producers, because they burn a lot of wood to produce the charcoal that we use in our charcoal pots. This increases their risk to develop disease. We also have people who work in bakeries. Bakeries are places where bread is being produced. Bakeries that use wood, that burn wood to produce the necessary heat for bread to be produced. Those people working there have a higher risk to suffer from these effects. We also have those people that work in drying fish dryers, because of much wood that has to be burnt. The risk for them to suffer from some of these effects are also high. Gari producers, people who process gari for a long period of time. And from some studies, if someone has been doing this activity for more than 10 years, the risk of that individual suffering the effects from firewood smoke are extremely increased. And as if that's not enough, we also have street cookers, people who fry puff-puff besides the streets, people who fry fish or they smoke fish and sell along the streets, people who prepare soya and sell to people along the streets. Much burning occurs during the processing of these different food items, and with prolonged breathing of the smoke that is produced in the course of preparing these food items, this increases their risk to suffer from the effects of firewood smoke. We also have another group of professionals like people who ride Suzukis, the Suzuki riders who are always on the street. Remember, we said last time that diesel emissions have a lot of chemicals that can affect our health. And therefore, what are we saying? If there is anybody who is doing this, any of these professions or practicing in any of these fields, the risk is extremely high, and we encourage some of these persons to take extreme measures to reduce exposure to firewood smoke. Like in the case of Suzuki riders, if they can use the N95 mask, which produces a good seal around the nostrils and the mouth, it will help to reduce the amount of diesel or emissions that come from vehicles that they will be breathing into their lungs that